You're watching Eyewitness Newsmakers.
We return now with the budget perspective from the other side of the aisle. Senate Minority Leader Bob Huff, Republican of Diamond Bar. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Great to be with you.
Let's talk about the governor's proposed budget. Your first official reaction was to question where all the Proposition 30 tax money is going to be going, the $6 billion or so to be generated this year.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair question. It was certainly the tax increases were sold to the electorate that this was going to go to education, and what they ended up with was a Prop 98 minimum guarantee.
$2.7 billion apparently is what's outlined so far. Numbers could be fluid, however.
Well, numbers are fluid depending on revenues, but it doesn't look like there's any commitment to increase that. What we did see, though, was an increase in pay for state workers, and also one of the furlough days was taken away, which is another $400 million that has to be charged to the general fund.
What's your overall reaction? It's a balanced budget. It puts $1 billion aside. From 2 years ago, looking at $25 billion in deficits, aren't you somewhat encouraged by this?
Listen, compared to where we've been, this is an awesome budget. You do have to put it in perspective, though. There's $22 billion of new resources between Prop 30, Prop 39, and even the increase just on the natural, $6 billion. Even Governor Gray Davis or Schwarzenegger could have balanced it with $22 billion worth of new revenues.
Didn't you say that this is basically budget is balanced by a $50 billion tax increase?
It depends on where you're going to draw the line and how many years out. But yes, you look at the Prop 30 and Prop 39, those come up with about $55 billion of increase over the next 7 years. But people often forget that had Prop 30 or 39 not passed, we would still be looking at about $6 billion, a little bit more than that, revenue over last year, which is also up about $6 billion. So the economy is coming back, not as fast as we would like. But the real question is, as you start to tax the economy more, does it slow it down? And we just don't know the answer to that.
You are decidedly in the minority in the legislature, you being Republicans. How do you have a voice at the table in this upcoming budget process that we're looking at today?
Well, there's no monopoly on good ideas, and often we find ourselves aligning ourselves with the legislative analysts when it comes to fiscal issues. Certainly, the legislative analyst is seen as a nonpartisan. That's his role, his or her role. Right now, it's a man. But we try to find the truth and put it out there, because when you have one party that dominates everything, they're not always interested in what the truth is. They're interested in what the spin is or what direction they're trying to take the state.
Are you somewhat encouraged by the fact the governor is saying to the legislature very clearly, don't go hog wild on the spending plan here. We have to show fiscal restraint?
Well, I am, but fiscal restraint to one person is fiscal excess to another. When you look at this budget, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to look at it, that we're growing government spending by 25% just over the next 4 years. So 25% growth there, and then we have the rest of these taxes coming on stream. What we're doing is basically funding at a whole other level of government, so we're creating our own fiscal cliff at the end of the 7 years when these taxes expire.
Won't there be other ways to generate revenue, I would imagine? The next legislature would come up with other ways to keep funding this fiscal cliff. Well,
if the two-thirds continues to where the Democrats or the majority party can raise taxes without Republican input, I expect when you get to the end of the cliff, these so-called temporary taxes will become permanent.
But some money, of course, does improve education, at least its prospects for not having to cut school days. And the governor has also got a novel proposal out there to fund districts in a different way, giving them more local control, but also redistributing the increase to districts that might need it more. Of course, very welcome news to LAUSD. What's your thought on that?
I think the current system is broken. I think everybody recognizes that. Because I tend to be a cautionary guy, as we go forward, we need to look and see if it plays out the way we want it. But the most important thing is don't just throw money at a situation, but require some deliverables back. Because there's a Stanford study a couple of years ago that made the comment that education needs more money, but to put it into this system without reform would be a waste. And so I think we have an opportunity as we redistribute this pot of money. How do we hold the school system accountable to deliver better results with the increased revenue?
Well, I imagine that Republicans are already going over this budget with their pencils and saying, here's what we would do were we to be able to get our ideas forward. What's the big idea coming out of Republicans that might be different from what the governor's got out there?
Well, it would sound the same as the governor's. It would just be implemented a little bit differently. We still have, even according to the governor's numbers, $180 billion of retirement debt. That's retirement and health care for state workers. that needs to be taken care of. So certainly we'd want to pay down that. The wall of debt that the governor defined very eloquently last year is a real thing. And while it doesn't have to be paid off today, that's something that should be retired. But at the end of the day, if education and public safety are our top priority, and we would argue they are, we think it's, everyone in California would agree to that, then you focus that first part of your budget, not the last part. And we have a tendency to put that at the last, use that as a lever to leverage people into giving us higher taxes, and then say, oh, well, we need this money. We don't really look hard at how government is using the money, and it leads itself to the park scandal, to, PERS having what we've seen recently.
A park budget that didn't have $56 million and then found it.
And then found it, or the PERS where they're actually the top management holding 2 different jobs, an hourly job in addition to the others to beef up their, those kinds of things. We need to have a lot more scrutiny on how we're using these monies.
We need to take a break, Senator. We'll come right back with some more questions about that debt and revenue right after this.